Can you imagine a world with less crops? Can you imagine a world with less flowers, with less fruit, with less of anything that pollinators give us? Some studies have contributed over 70% of what we eat directly due to pollinators. Hi, my name is Terry Maxwell. I'm a science educator at Seneca High School. In 2017, I started a conservation group, CIA, Conservation Action, at our high school. This group turned an area of lawn grass into a large native pollinator garden. Over the years, I've seen some amazing things out at our pollinator garden as it's developed. I'd like to share with you some reasons that you should start your own native pollinator garden in your home landscaping. You might be thinking to yourself, why do we need to plant native plants with everything going on in the world? First off, studies have shown that being in nature can reduce your stress level, and we could all use a little stress reduction right now. Studies have even shown that being indoors but having a view of nature can reduce stress levels. So bringing nature into your yard is a valuable health benefit to you. Secondly, I believe that if many people in the community start planting native plants in their home landscaping, it'll develop a deeper sense of community. Imagine learning more and more about native plants and the benefits to native pollinators, and bringing nature into your yard and telling others about it. And then your neighbor does the same. And then he tells someone about it. And then they do something about it. It's a way of paying it forward for nature. Native plants have undergone a significant drop in population over the years. Much of that is due to habitat loss and urbanization, habitat fragmentation, invasive plants, and herbicide use. Illinois is a prime example of habitat loss for native plants. In 1978, there were only 2,300 acres left of what was deemed high-quality prairie across the state, even though we're known as the Prairie State. That's well over 90% of native habitat that's now lost for native plants. While restoration sites are created every year, just like nearby in Dayton Bluffs Prairie, north of Ottawa, the amount of habitat that we've lost will never be restored here in Illinois. The problem is many of the insects that are now here depend on those plants to survive. Some of those plants are host plants, meaning that the caterpillars of the young insects grow up on them, and now those are lost or severely reduced in number. An example of a host plant would be like milkweed. Monarch butterfly caterpillars exclusively use milkweed to feed. There are several different types of milkweed found across the Midwest that monarchs use as host plants. However, much of that milkweed has declined. Another issue is overuse of herbicides. It's crucial to create areas that are herbicide-free that allow native plants to grow undisturbed. Lastly, invasive plants are a big issue. Invasive plants crowd out areas that native plants use to grow. By choosing to use native plants in the landscaping, you're not choosing non-native plants that could be invasive. So what are the benefits for the homeowner to use native plants in the landscaping? One of the biggest benefits is that they're easy to take care of. Because they're native to this region, once they're established, they're relatively maintenance-free. Most native plants are also drought resistant because of their long roots. Native plants will draw all kinds of wildlife into your garden. For example, many species of native plants will draw in a multitude of butterflies into your garden area. And I already mentioned the health benefits to drawing nature into your yard. Native plants can have value to your home and garden. They're beautiful. They draw people in, they make people feel at home. They're a great addition to the home landscaping. Lastly, bringing native plants into your yard can make you feel more connected with nature. The more you learn about the connections between insects and that particular plant, like monarchs and milkweed, you feel more connected to your home landscaping. The more you understand what you're planting, the more you'll care about it. So some of you may be thinking, why would I want to bring bees into my home landscaping? Let me try to reassure you. I've been out in our native prairie garden at school many times, and I've been around hundreds of bees, and not once have I ever felt threatened by one. Bees, while they're on flowers, are like happy gardeners. They're not defending a territory. They're there to collect pollen, and they're there to collect nectar. Obviously, if you or your family is allergic to bees or wasps, you do need to take special consideration about that before planting a native garden. One of the other issues I typically hear about native plants is they look too much like weeds. They're messy. But typically, that's not the case. Research what you're going to plant. Make sure it works for your garden area and your space. Know how big it gets. Know if it spreads. Know if it self-seeds. and you can save yourself some frustration down the line. Some native plants aren't meant for the home landscaping, so it's important that you do your research before you start planting native plants. So hopefully by this point, maybe you're at least thinking about wanting to plant some native plants. So what's the best way to do it? Well, let me give you some tips that might help. First of all, plant variety. Native pollinators have different mouth shapes, so not every pollinator can visit every flower and collect nectar effectively. So plant a variety of shapes. There's all kinds of different flowers out there with native plants. Know when your plants bloom. Plants in the Midwest typically bloom from April all the way into early October. It's important to know which plants in your garden bloom when. That way you can create a food source for your pollinators all season long by giving them flowers that last from April all the way into the fall. It's not all about the flowers. Use some native grasses. Grasses play an important role in the prairie ecosystem. Grasses are also host plants, but they also provide structure for your garden, and they also provide shelter for native pollinators. I recommend you stay away from tall grass species. Tall grass species typically take over areas, so be careful if you're in a small area in town. Plant shorter grasses. Do your research and plant host plants. As I already mentioned, monarchs use milkweed as a host plant. However, many different butterflies use other types of plants. It's important to know which plants are going to be used by those butterflies, so your garden can be used for the butterfly's whole life cycle. I hope this has given you some ideas on how to plant native plants in your home landscaping. If you're local in Seneca, please fill out this form to learn more about opportunities through the Conservation Action Group at Seneca High School. We're looking to host native plant sessions in the summer for the community so that you can learn more about native plants and native plant gardening. If you'd like to follow our Conservation and Action Group, you can follow us on Twitter at Seneca CIA. I hope you're able to take some steps to help native pollinators by including native plants in your home garden. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments below. I hope you can plant native plants in your garden. There's really no better way to connect to nature in your home landscaping.